Look down at your hands. Your fingernails are likely neatly trimmed, maybe softly filed, ending right at the edge of your skin. Now imagine you are a prehistoric hunter moving through dense brush. You reach out to forcefully push a heavy branch away, and a jagged, 3-inch overgrown fingernail catches hard on the rough, splintered bark. The nail bends back violently, tearing away from the sensitive bed, filling your hand with blinding pain. In the modern world, a torn nail is just a temporary annoyance. But thousands of years ago, a bleeding finger meant a wide-open door to deadly bacteria. Before the discovery of antibiotics, a simple infection from a torn nail could easily end your life in a matter of days. For the vast majority of human history, the reliable steel nail clipper simply did not exist. The familiar lever-action clipper you have sitting in your bathroom cabinet was not invented until the late 19th century. That leaves roughly 300,000 years where early humans had to figure out how to stop their own biology from turning against them in unforgiving environments. How did a prehistoric human avoid turning into a useless, clawed creature without accidentally slicing their own fingers off in the process? The answer involves intentional friction, razor-sharp volcanic glass, ancient superstitious magic, and a deeply biological instinct you probably still use today when you feel nervous. To understand the solution, you first have to understand why human fingers are built so strangely. Millions of years ago, our distant primate ancestors lived high in the trees. They had long, highly curved claws designed for gripping thick bark and swinging effortlessly from branches. But as our ancestors moved down from the forest canopy and out onto the flat, grassy savanna, those claws became a massive physical liability. Claws get in the way of walking upright on flat feet, and they make it entirely impossible to hold things with precise, fine motor control. Try picking up a tiny seed or threading a bone needle with long claws in the way. It absolutely does not work. So, evolution traded our claws for flattened plates of hard, transparent keratin. These flat nails act as a rigid backing for the soft, highly sensitive fleshy pads of our fingertips. When you press your finger against a hard surface, the nail provides a firm wall for the tissue to push against, focusing the thousands of nerve endings and allowing you to feel incredibly fine, microscopic details. It is the anatomical, secret weapon that allowed early humans to invent complex tools. But there was a major biological catch. Evolution forgot to put a stop switch on the body's keratin production. Human nails grow about 3.5 millimeters every single month. In a single year, that is over an inch of hard, dead tissue continuously pushing past your fingertips. Left alone, human fingernails do not grow straight out. They naturally curl and spiral into tight horns, making it physically impossible to hold a spear, grip a stone, or build a fire. So, early humans had to carefully manage this constant, unending growth. Luckily, the brutal hunter-gatherer lifestyle provided the very first line of defense. Prehistoric humans spent their days digging deep in hard, rocky earth for edible roots and aggressively scraping dried animal hides with rough stones. They snapped branches, wove rough baskets, and struck flint against rock to spark fires. Their hands were completely exposed to intense, daily friction. The earth itself acted as a giant, naturally occurring emery board. For a hard-working early human, their nails were constantly being sanded down, chipped, and worn away by the simple, brutal act of surviving the elements. But wear and tear is chaotic, leaving jagged, sharp edges and painful splits that easily catch on animal fur or woven plant fibers. Passive friction was not enough to keep their hands perfectly functional. They needed to actively intervene and groom themselves. When natural friction failed, ancient humans turned to their very first built-in grooming tool, their teeth. Nail biting is widely seen today as a bad habit driven by anxiety, but evolutionary biologists suspect that this urge is actually a deeply ingrained grooming instinct. The human jaw is powerful, and our front teeth are perfectly shaped to shear off thin strips of dead keratin. For early humans, biting their nails was a fast way to trim sharp edges before they could snag. It is an instinct we share with other primates who routinely chew off their overgrown nails. But biting has a massive flaw. You cannot easily reach your toenails, and a bitten nail is often left with microscopic rough edges. To get a clean cut, our ancestors needed technology. Enter stone tools, specifically obsidian and flint. When a piece of volcanic obsidian is struck perfectly, It fractures to create an edge that is literally a single molecule thick. An ancient obsidian blade is far sharper than the surgical steel scalpels used in modern hospitals today. We know from archaeological evidence that early humans used tiny, sharp stone flakes to carefully score and peel away overgrown nail tissue. They would also sit by riverbanks and use rough, porous stones like pumice or sandstone to meticulously file down the sharp corners. It was effective, but it required an incredibly steady hand. You were essentially using broken glass to slice hard tissue away from one of the most nerve-dense areas of your entire body. As humans evolved into the Bronze and Iron Ages, metal changed everything, but it did not make nail care less dangerous. People began using small metal paring knives and iron shears to trim their hands. But a strange thing happened when humanity settled into cities and invented complex social classes. The fingernail stopped being just a survival hazard and suddenly became a powerful status symbol. Since the working class had worn, chipped nails from farming, the ruling class realized they could prove their elite status by doing the exact opposite. In ancient China, during the Ming and Qing dynasties, wealthy nobles and royals intentionally grew their fingernails out to absurd lengths, sometimes reaching up to 8 inches long. To prevent these massive curling nails from breaking, they wore hollow, ornate nail guards, made of solid gold, silver, and jade. It was the ultimate social flex. Having massive fingernails told the entire world that you did absolutely zero manual labor. You did not dig, you did not fight, and you did not build. You were so wealthy that you paid a small army of servants to do every physical task for you, including feeding you. In ancient Rome, wealthy citizens visited public baths and hired specialized enslaved workers called tuncers to painstakingly shape their nails using tiny iron blades and imported pumice stone. Having clean, perfectly shaped fingernails became a sign of civilization. But even in these advanced societies, clipping your nails carried a strange, dark weight. Throughout the Middle Ages, many cultures believed that your hair and fingernail clippings held a piece of your soul. If you threw your clippings on the ground, an enemy could use them in a ritual to curse you. Because of this widespread fear, people would meticulously gather their severed nails and burn them in the hearth fire or bury them deep in the dirt. Whether you were a Roman senator or a medieval peasant burying your clippings in the woods, the actual act of cutting your nails was still a terrifying, tedious process. For thousands of years, the standard method for a normal person was to take a razor-sharp paring knife or a crude pair of scissors and try to delicately slice through the thick keratin. Think about how difficult that actually is. You have to hold a sharp blade in your non-dominant hand and carefully slice toward the sensitive skin of your good hand without slipping. One mistake, and you open up a deep gash on your thumb. Small scissors were slightly safer, but they required a sweeping lateral cutting motion that tended to crush and splinter the rounded nail, rather than cutting it cleanly. For centuries, this was simply an accepted risk of personal hygiene. People just dealt with the danger and the difficulty because there was no other option. It was not until the Industrial Revolution that someone finally looked at this ancient problem and decided there had to be a better way. In the 1870s, inventors in the United States began experimenting with dedicated, single-purpose fingernail trimmers. But the real breakthrough came in the 1880s with inventors like Eugene Heim and Chapel Carter. They completely abandoned the idea of a knife blade or a scissor. Instead, they used a brilliant piece of mechanical engineering known as a compound lever. The modern nail clipper they helped develop is actually a masterclass in physics. When you press down on that small metal thumb lever, the mechanism multiplies the force of your fingers, focusing all that mechanical pressure onto 2 curved opposing jaws. Instead of slicing across the nail like a dangerous knife, the jaws pinch and crush straight through the thick keratin in a fraction of a second. It is clean, it is safe, and it requires almost zero fine motor skills. You can easily use a clipper with your left hand, your right hand, or in the dark. It was a marvel of cheap, stamped steel engineering that completely democratized personal hygiene. Almost overnight, you did not need to be a wealthy aristocrat with a dedicated servant, and you did not need to risk cutting your fingers open with a pocket knife. The lever-action clipper was so effective, cheap to mass-produce, and easy to use that it conquered the world. It was so perfect that the basic design has barely changed in over a century, and it completely erased our collective memory of the sheer difficulty that came before it. We take for granted that our bodies require constant maintenance to exist comfortably in the physical world. Your biology is still acting like you are a wild primate living in the trees, constantly pushing out dead keratin that you have to deal with. The next time you squeeze that tiny metal lever to trim your nails, realize what you are actually doing. You are participating in a 300,000-year-old tradition of humans trying to keep their own biology from getting in the way of their tools. It is a tiny, mechanical victory over nature. If you found this hidden history interesting, click subscribe to help us uncover more stories about the things you touch every day.